we get started, and we'll get started with some singing. That is what we're here to do. And everyone at home, so our folks who are in the sanctuary, they don't have a life vest under their seat, but they do have percussion instruments. So if you have something in your room that you want to shake or drum on or anything like that, feel free to grab it. I think about Psalm 150. I think about this list of all of the instruments with which people can sing songs of praise. Though of course the most important one of those is just the breath that you have. Kol ha-neshama tehalel Yah. So however you like to engage with this music, I think that's the best way. So we'll start with actually a beautiful song. I'm going to do my best to look up and down. We actually have about equal numbers on our in-person group and our online group, which is an amazing thing. So this is a new song that was composed by the great singer-songwriter Elana Arian in a collective with two other great composers, Deborah Sachs-Mintz, whose music we have sung here, and also with Chava Mirel. And this latest song I thought would be nice to begin with. They are words that come from the 27th Psalm that we sing throughout the month of Elul. These words that we may know, Achat Sha'alti, right? That this one thing I request, but only to look upon the divine presence. These are other words that come from the Psalm. Shema Adonai Kuli Ekra. Hear, O God, hear my voice when I will cry. And we'll talk about, the beautiful thing about Elana's music is that there's always these English pieces to it. And so even if you don't have to understand every single word of what the text is, you can internalize exactly what she is talking about by the way that she then sets the poetic English text. So we'll sing this first. This is going to be a kind of an informal way. It's not going to be a concert, and these are going to be songs that will be unfamiliar. So we're going to repeat things a lot. I encourage you just to. I had a choir teacher that said be loud and wrong, rather than to be correct and quiet, because that's really how we learn. We learn by making mistakes. This is a wonderful, warm community. And so you don't have to sing all the words. I'll certainly teach you the words, but you can also always just sing these on a wordless melody, or you can hum them, or you can use those percussion instruments that you've got in your lap, or perhaps strapped elsewhere to your body. I've seen people that put them attached to their feet. Shema Adonai Koli Ekra. Shema Adonai Koli Ekra. Shema Adonai Koli Ekra. Koli Ekra. We'll repeat that section a few times. Shema Adonai. Shema Adonai Koli Ekra. Shema Adonai Koli Ekra. You sound beautiful, fabulous. Shema Adonai Koli Ekra. And I will follow. Pull me and I will follow. Pull me and I will follow. Pull me and I will follow. Shema Adonai Koli Ekra. Shema Adonai Koli Ekra. Shema Adonai Koli Ekra. Koli Ekra. So we'll come back to that melody perhaps a little bit later, but I wanted to talk about a concept that Alana in her music brings forth. This is a teaching from the great Debbie Friedman, who mentored Alana and so many songwriters in recent generations. And actually, one of my classmates is actually writing her thesis about that concept, about the school of people who have been influenced by Alana's music. What Debbie Friedman talks about is the concept of music as midrash, of the fact that there are musical features that tell us how we can interpret words. It's not necessarily the fact that there is, let me silence that. It's not necessarily, it's the fact that we can learn what it is about the songwriter's view of that text, the way in which they compose. So if we think about that, in this opening moment of the song, we sing these words, Shema Adonai Koli Ekra. Each time, right, the text continues to rise. We start kind of mellow, Shema Adonai Koli Ekra. We bring this up one note, Shema Adonai Koli Ekra. But maybe we didn't quite hear it. Maybe we do one more time, Shema Adonai Koli. What happens next? Ekra. Right? And so I know that we know this. I feel like this is something that's so central to what we learned throughout the month of Elul, what we learned throughout all of the holidays. The fact that we can't just start with Ne'ilah, right? We can't start with the end of the holidays. It's all about repetition and progression, and the fact that we dig deeper into ourselves. And I feel like that's something that Alana gets at by repeating that idea of, hear, O God, hear my voice when I cry. Hear, O God, hear my voice, hear when I cry. And then last time, right, Shema Adonai Koli Ekra. And then it tapers off. Ekra. Maybe we were embarrassed, perhaps. Koli Ekra. Koli Ekra, right? And we come back to something a little more intimate. I don't know if this is a Micah melody, but I think about that Shema Kolenu, Shema Kolenu. I don't know if the choir ever sung that one, but that was a melody that I always grew up with. And something that always bothered me about the melody is the fact that it starts immediately with this Shema Kolenu, but maybe we're not there yet. Maybe we have to start with Shema Adonai Koli Ekra, and then we pull. Then eventually we dig deep into where we need to get to. I think as well about this section, this next section. Pull me and I will follow. Can you hold this note? Pull. Can we just sing that together? Pull. Beautiful. Now we're going to sing that note against this chord, and you're going to hear a pull. Can we sing the note? Pull. Our musicians, we're all musicians here. Where would we resolve that note? Pull. This song would not mean half as much if it was pull me and I will follow. It doesn't really do anything. Pull me and I will follow. Pull me and I will follow. Pull, one more time. Pull me and I will follow. So that's just another moment in this piece that really stands out for me. That pull. I think that so often we think of, there's a term that we use in music, it's text painting, right? The idea of how you, if we're singing about the mountains, how we would ascend. If we talk about going down to the depths, how deep is the ocean? How high is the sky? But I think there's the fact that sometimes we overlook what harmony can do in terms of how we can see what a composer means. So something maybe that we can think about too is this call, right? There's nothing in the text Shema Adonai Kol Yekra that mentions something about a pull, but what the composer seems to be doing for us here is saying that it's not just to be heard, it's the fact that maybe we need to be pulled out from a rut. The Elul project is going to be talking about the concept of Ata Noten Yad, this liturgy that we have at the end of Yom Kippur, at the end of Ne'ilah, that we need, the help that we need to do teshuvah, to repent, to bring ourselves into the version of ourselves that we would like to imagine in the year to come. And so maybe just an opening thought is, what do we need to be pulled out of? And who does that pulling? Something to start us. To start us. Teddy, please.
Do you think there's a possibility that people will think that Pull Me and I Will Follow is the translation of Shema Adonai? I mean, it's curious that I think most of this music that uses Hebrew and English often, at least at the beginning, would be translation of the Hebrew.
Right. I think it's such a yeah. The question was about the fact that Pull Me and I Will Follow is not the translation. Is not the translation of Shema Adonai Kol Yekra. And I think, and so there can be something misleading about it. What I think is beautiful about what so many composers do now is that they'll give you translations. They'll write. We don't need to just sing the words in English. That we can get what maybe literally what this means. And I think for me, I sometimes think that that's like what turns, like that's what makes it into art and not education. Like that it's that. Any thoughts? Any thoughts about what is the effect of singing Pull Me and I Will Follow in the English versus singing?
We know what it means.
That's the midrash. That's the midrash.
Yeah. That's the midrash. That's the midrash.
It's not a translation, but an interpretation.
Yeah. Right. And I mean, I think back to something that Richard Lahn said in services last week, that the first of the morning blessings we sing, Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher natan lasech v'hina lehavchin ben yom uven laila, and we read in the Siddur, it says who's given us the mind, the wisdom to discern day from night, but it's the rooster. It's who gives the rooster the ability to discern day from night, and all translation is interpretation. And yes. Thank you so much. I realize the questions don't always come through so clearly, so thank you so much. I'll make sure to repeat all the questions. Wonderful. Let's journey into something a little bit different. This next text. This is one of my favorite piyut team. A piyut is a liturgical poem. This is a piyut that comes from an unknown author with music that comes from the Spanish-Portuguese tradition. In fact, many of the Jews who were exiled from Spain and Portugal, who moved, who rather than going to North Africa or to going to Eretz Israel, many of these communities found a new home in Amsterdam, and in fact, many of the earliest Jews that we have, the Jewish communities that we have in our country today, actually are descended from these Sephardi Jews. And this would be a melody. Kamti Lehalel is a melody that would be sung the first thing in the morning on Shabbat, and I think you'll hear why. It sounds to me like a sunrise. It sounds like the the very first things we hear or see in the morning. So if you can imagine, if you close your eyes for a second, and we'll sing this on a wordless melody, and then we'll go over the text. Ya, ya la la la, ya la 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 la, ya la 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 la, ya la 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 la. Try with me. Ya la 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 la, ya la 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 la, ya la 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 la, ya la 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 la, ya la 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 la, ya la la la, ya la la la, ya la 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 la, ya la la. קמתי להלל לשם האל הנכבד שיצר כל ויום השביעי שבת. קמתי להלל לשם האל הנכבד שיצר כל ויום השביעי שבת. ואזמר לו בעוד בהילו מזמור שיר ליום השבת. ואזמר לו בעוד בהילו מזמור שיר ליום השבת. The second stanza, ובזכותה תנצרנו קרבת, ואחר מוות תצילנו מן לבת, להתעדן בגן עדן, עולם שכולו Shabbat. There's a word in there that I was talking with Rabbi Crowley about yesterday, that there's no equivalent in the English, להתעדן. And perhaps it's a little bit easier to see than it is actually to hear. But if you look at the second stanza, this is the do you see that word להתעדן? Two lines from the very bottom. What does that word evoke? להתעדן. If you had to take a guess, Aiden. Say again. Lahiz dagif. What is? Lahiz dagif. To dagif. To dizenkov. Hebrew is no stranger to making verbs out of nouns. I was talking with someone the other day about the phrase to architect, that we would never say to architect until this time. So this is something that's as old as Hebrew poetry, to turn words into nouns. So lahitadein, lahit is the reflexive verb form. It's to do something to yourself. So what is a way that we can translate lahitadein? To Edenize. To eat in ourselves. What is that? What does that bring up for you? The concept of what would that mean? To Edenize yourself on Shabbat. Can you give like an example or something that might mean for you? Peacefulness. What was that you said, Teddy?
To perfect yourself.
Oh, how interesting. To perfect ourselves. I thought of that to revel or something, but interesting to me perhaps like le'adem could be to make something perfect. Yeah, fair.
But it's also uncomplicating yourself, because in Eden there was no complication, there was no conflict. They just were existing in this ideal environment.
Fair, beautiful. To simplify, to do to do away. We're going to be talking about a different piyut, Ki Yishmera Shabbat, that talks about the fact that we're not supposed to engage in business, we're not supposed to engage in government, is one of the specific lyrics of it. And I think of to simplify, to remove conflict. That would be really beautiful.
In response to the Heschel line, eternity others a day.
In fact, that Rabbi Zemmel specified that this evokes the thought of Heschel, of eternity utters a day, of all of eternity being able to be contained in Shabbat. Anyone on Zoom that has an idea about what that means, lehitadain, to you, or you can write in the chat too. Is totally fine. Perhaps it's something that's worth meditating on. But that my teacher Norman Cohen, every single Thursday in our class, he would always say, "This is our Shabbos gift," and he would read us some nice piece of midrash. Barbara, please. Meditating on an apple. Yeah. So do you imagine holding? Barbara says to meditate on an apple on Shabbat, like eating, like savoring the apple, or just looking. I love that. What a beautiful image. I wonder for everyone what this can mean, and I ever since I heard this lyric, I think that the beautiful thing, what do we need poetry for? And I think what poetry gives us is it gives us phrases. It gives us phrases that perhaps we don't encounter in prose, and sometimes you find an image, and the image can stick. And so I hope that you can find for yourself what to eat in yourself means on Shabbat. Let's sing the second stanza. Uvizchuta. Uvizchuta tinsreinu kevavat ve'achar mavet tatzilenu min labat lehitadein began Eden olam shekulo Shabbat lehitadein began Eden olam shekulo Shabbat. There are many ways, of course, to celebrate Shabbat. Many ways to Edenize ourselves. One of those ways is, as Betsy said, to simplify, to reduce conflict. And I think that is so much of what's at the heart of the piyut, Ki Yishmera Shabbat, composed by one of the great Paitanim, Abraham ibn Ezra, who had a double career. He had more than a double career. These were really Renaissance people. And in addition to being one of the great commentators on all of Tanakh, he also was one of the last of the giant poets who came from Al-Andalus, from present day Spain and Portugal. What's interesting about Ibn Ezra is that while many of his predecessors, we know the name Yehuda Halevi, we might know the name Shlomo ibn Gabirol, these were all poets who were active in Muslim Spain. Ibn Ezra straddled the difference of when this area was largely controlled by Muslim kingdoms into when they were recaptured by Christian kingdoms. And so there's a lot of tension in his poetry dealing with this period of transition. You wouldn't necessarily know that from this piyut, ki yeshmera Shabbat, el yishmereni, oti le'ol me'ad beino uveini, for when I keep Shabbat, God protects me. It is an eternal sign between God and between me. And what I'm thinking about in this text is I'm thinking about this line in these first two stanzas, where we say that Asur mitzol chefetz la'asot terachim, gam mi ledaber bo divrei tzrachim, divrei schora o divrei melachim, that it is for, and then we'll finish the stanza, Eke b'torat el utechak meni, that it is forbidden on this, that we say it's forbidden on this day to take journeys, to talk of worldly things. I don't think as much, that word, by the way, Asur, it sounds like my name, Asor. I'm not thinking as much about what is actually being told is forbidden to me. What I think, I chose to translate this as I put away my desire. I put away my desire for journeys. That even if we must take a journey, that it's not something I'm excited. I'm excited to go travel. Let me check the chat here. Okay. Thank you. I just saw the post from earlier. I put away my desire for journeys and for worldly things. And then my favorite part, for thoughts of business and for thoughts of government, which I have noticed that is a particularly hard thing to do here. Rabbi Sklut said a couple weeks ago that it really does feel that all of the news in our country seems to radiate out from this space. And so I chose this poem today specifically because of this thought of putting away the thoughts of government. We have the obligation, I think, to preach about government and to preach about this really, at the risk of using an overused word, unprecedented, to talk about these times. And yet, aside from the way that we preach, are there ways in which that we can put away these desires, and we can instead imagine, Rabbi Braha, what you've talked about imagining what can be, without necessarily having to be linked to such a specific moment in time. And I think that's something, I imagine Ibn Ezra, who's dealing with this political strife and is finding a way to focus then instead on the specifics of the nourishment. If we look in the second stanza, we have that those who work on it, that we shorten our days. What a line. That it's not that God shortens our days, it's just that when we don't take advantage of this day, that what we do to ourselves. And therefore, in its cleansing waters, this is another image I've never encountered before. Achabes bo libi bevorit, that I refresh my heart in its cleansing waters, that we can almost imagine like a heart bath. I hope that we can take away a couple mental images of things that we can do on Shabbat. And therefore I pray evening and morning, Musaf and afternoon, may I find the answers that I seek. This is a melody that comes out of the Moroccan tradition. You can get those shakers out, you can get that. I'm not a great percussionist, but it feels like this is more appropriate. I'm hearing a little bit of those shakers. Let's get those going. Beautiful. Ya la 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 la. Ya la 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 la. Ya la 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 la. Ya la 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 la. Ya la 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 la. Ya la 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 la. Ya la 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 la. Ya la 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 la. Ki yesh me נפלאות, דברי מלכים, אגה בתורתל, אגה תורתל, ותחכמני, יא לה 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 לה, יא לה 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 לה, יא לה 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 לה, יא לה 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 לה, יא לה 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 לה, יא לה 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 לה, יא לה 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 לה, יא לה 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 לה. That's the best part, is when it slows down at the end and then you can just kind of let it all rattle. I love that, I love that. Really, great rhythm. Really good rhythm. That's great, that's great. The last time I played a cajon was actually at camp where Teddy, where I got to work with Teddy's son Aaron, and I wasn't married at the time, and so I didn't have the experience of banging this thing on this hand drum. Anyway, it adds like another effect. Right. Exactly. Yafa. Let's do something a little different. I think I'd love to share a melody that's actually it's an Argentinian melody for text that you may know, the great poem Yedid Nefesh. Why is the tango the perfect setting for Yedid Nefesh, the beloved of my soul? I think it almost goes without speaking, but this is one of the great love songs that we have in our tradition. And there was a way in which the mystical poets, of which Rabbi Israel Nahara, who was active in Tzfat following the expulsion from Spain, his poetry was one of the most inspiring and influential bodies of work for the mystics that were active in Tzfat, and which is where we get the custom of Kabbalat Shabbat, of welcoming in the Shabbat bride. And I think sometimes there can be a discomfort in our time about engaging with a personal God, about imagining ourselves as being in loving relationship with God. But this was the language of the time, and I think that the language is so evocative, and that's why nearly, what is it now, 600 years later, 500? That's not the part that I study. That these texts have continued to inspire. And so we'll sing just two stanzas of Yedid Nefesh, and I'm going to do this one on piano because I can't possibly do a tango on guitar. I wish, but. So our text, Yedid Nefesh av harachaman, mishoch avdach el ritzonach. The beloved, dear one of my soul, the compassionate one, draw your servant. We have that callback to pull me and I will follow. Mishoch avdach, to pull your servant according to your will. Yarutz avdach kamo ayal, that your servant will leap, will run like a deer. I think that something that's come up for me here at Micah, I imagine all these Kabbalat Shabbat songs as being really gentle, and yet Rabbi Crowley said something to me. She said that, well, it can also be intense. A love song can be intense. It doesn't just have to be gentle. And so when I imagine that concept of yarutz, of what if we ran to the Shabbat bride instead of letting her come in so gently, that we were so eager for Shabbat, and that concept stayed with me. Yedid nefesh av harachaman meshochav dach el retzonach yarutz avdach kmo hayah ishtachaveh el mul hadarach yedid nefesh harachaman meshochav dach el retzonach yarutz avdach kmo hayah ishtachaveh el mul hadarach. Let me try one more time. By the way, you have those drums. If you can absolutely keep going with that percussion, if you like it, try something like dun da da dun da dun da da dun da dun da da dun da dun da da and yedid nefesh harachaman meshochav dach el retzonach yarutz avdach kmo hayah ishtachaveh el mul hadarach yerab lo yedidutah minofet zuf v'chol That was composed by a living composer who's active in Argentina, Norberto Fogel, and he's a composer of different kinds of dance music. Not necessarily only a Jewish composer, but something about that melody I felt captured that text in a way that just really felt like a glove to me. Wow. Can't tell you how much of a joy it is to get to sing with you, get to hear your thoughts and to get to hear your rhythm. Please.
I love the fact that we're leaping like a deer in order to bow down.
Oh,
It's a great, almost a dance leap and then
what a beautiful. The comment is that that we are that it's not just to leap to run like a deer, and it's not just yishtachaveh, right? It's not just the bowing. If we think of the Aleinu, I don't know if has there ever been like a full prostration, in you're right, yeah. So right, that when we oftentimes, if we chant, if we're chanting Aleinu, we have a little bow, right? A bow that's not all that different from our Barchu, but then on the High Holy Days, the Chazan would go all the way down to the floor, which is tough too if you're wearing wearing a full robe. You need help to get up. And so, but the fact of it's not just the bowing, it's not just the running, but it's the running, the leaping into the bow, that it's a dance move. It absolutely, What I've never. Oh, I love that. Very Liz Lerman. Wow. Yeah, what a wonderful observation, Teddy. Please.
Don't you think this C natural just before the end makes it Jewish? Can you play what it would be with the C sharp?
Sure. So Teddy asked that there is a lowered note that happens in the very last measure. So if we were to play just the ending, we would have minofet suf v'chol. We might expect chotam. Instead, what we have is bum 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 ba 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 bum bum. Which yes, this version of it feels like there's almost more of a pull, or to me I hear it that way, but then I hear that with instead of having this note to have that note, I think it makes it mellower. It actually makes it a little sad. Maybe perhaps there's actually almost more longing in it. Maybe.
Those are not so Western.
Oh yeah. I wonder. I don't know. I think it's so funny. I mean, I think so much of what's so interesting is that we have so many just like internalized thoughts of what music means, like what a certain musical gesture means. And the same thing of, the idea that pull me and I will follow, that means something in a way that maybe if we weren't socialized with it, it would mean something different. I think that's a really interesting point to draw out, Teddy. Wow. Rabbi Zimel, please.
First of all, I want to thank you for what you're doing, your teaching. I want to reflect just for a second on your comment about and I don't know what word to use, style, quality, sound, tempo of musical settings for Kabbalat Shabbat.
Yeah.
And when you made that comment, and then you said that Rabbi Crowley used the word intense or intensity, my mind went back to the Ibn Ezra text in the word chayfetz. And Asur uto chayfetz la'asot machim. Now, when I'm by myself in my office and I need to translate the word chayfetz, I use the word passion. Because I think of Hamelech chafetz b'chaim.
Right.
Which is a holy day.
I'm going to repeat. I will repeat all of this, by the way. No. You're fine.
The God who is passionate for life. And so, put away your passions for lasot rachim, the worldly things. Your passion is for, and then you have to fill in, Shabbat, God, entering the garden. And in Rabbi Crowley's use of the word intensity, intense, which I very, very much like, I'm reminded how the Western European influence on Reform Judaism denuded us of the ability to show emotion and display emotion and be emotional in the sanctuary. And this is one of the downsides that I think we're still trying to strip ourselves
Right.
of in our great North American embrace of Judaism in a liberal way. So I think one of the greatest tools we have is music, because we want this sense of energy that can unlock the emotion and the passion and the intensity. Without it, we are left with no ability to explore what God might be for us. We are left in this frozen intellectual realm up here, and we need every tool we have in the box, and tools we cannot yet dream of, to unlock what needs to be unlocked.
Right.
So,
Wow.
So this exploration is doing a lot for us.
Oh. Rabbi, thank you. And I think for me what stands out about Rabbi Zemel's point we're talking about the word chayfetz, right? That we find in Ki Shmerah Shabbat, and the difficulty of not necessarily the difficulty of translating, but to translate that word chayfetz as passion, coming back to Rabbi Crowley's thought of intensity, of the intensity of a Shabbat love song. And so what we have here is the idea that so much of the religious tradition that we're steeped in, and the fact that it is how we've been influenced by the earliest days of Jewish reform, and now the fact that synagogues today are operating in an environment in which much of passion and emotion can be stripped away from what religious practices, that it's much more about decorum. Just to add a little bit of commentary, so much of what this move did in music in the earliest synagogues was to make the synagogue feel much more like church, so that it wasn't that you had you didn't have the Jews mumbling over each other, right? That it could feel like a cacophony of every now and then the Chazan sings a line, and then everyone kind of mumbles at the right, and that if people from outside of the Jewish community were to see this, they might think that it didn't look civilized, and so you have the insertion of the organ into the synagogue. You have instead of the Chazan, you have the cantor and a choir, and that everyone knows exactly what to sing. You have a hymnal. I mean, you have the union hymnal. And this earliest Jewish hymnal, and so what Rabbi Zembelin says is the fact that the music that finding different kinds of music that can key into the emotional aspect of religious life, and that music is the vehicle through which that is possible, and so I happen to say I fully agree. And what I have noticed though is that the energy here at Micah, I don't feel a fear of being emotional, of being energetic in prayer. I think that that's an amazing thing that has been cultivated in the history of this community. To my brief understanding thus far. Betsy, please.
One of the things that strikes me also is a sense of spontaneity. So moving away from what is just kind of regimented. Many people, when you go to other services, realize how closely choreographed and unvarying the practice is. And then you come here, and even though everything is still choreographed and scheduled, there's a sense of, but we're living our lives, and we're spontaneous people and respond to the moment. There's another
Right.
thing which music brings to us as well.
Betsy was commenting on spontaneity of worship, and the fact that something comes to the fore, right? If there's based on something that was said earlier in the service, you'll hear our rabbis call back to it and go off the page, right? They'll go off the page if the moment calls for it, and so that what music can do is is that it can exactly that. I mean, Deborah's approach is very much spontaneous, in the sense that she prepares and prepares and prepares, but she doesn't necessarily specify the number of times that we're going to sing, that first time. That we're not going to sing the verse 5 times and then go on, but that it very much is, according to the feel of the community. And I remember that was something that Deborah really taught me in the first couple of my first couple of weeks getting to collaborate with her. Thank you. About Miriam's dance on Shabbat Shira. Oh yeah, yeah. HUC services are often very choreographed and very and they can feel a little same week to week, even though there's different student leaders that will will take ownership of the service. And Barbara, I'm thinking of my partner in one of my services this year, another Tish student, Alyssa Platkow, and one of my dear friends at school. She said that she said, I want us to dance for Mi Chamocha and for Miriam's song, and this was in this is in the COVID emergence of when people really aren't holding hands. She says, no, we're gonna stand and we're gonna, and my, I was so embarrassed. They said, no, we can't. She says, no, we're gonna do it. And we did it. And it was chayfetz. It was,
Passover community dinner here. We did the dance all around. We got up from our tables and we danced through the whole place. It was great. It made us feel connected.
depending on how we're feeling, I think we should should close with that. I'm not joking. I think we can do a dance around the room with these with these drums and wow. I thought I would share with you to take us. We started with Elul. We started with this song of seeking. And I thought we would close. If it's okay, I actually did want to share an original melody with you that felt connected to some of the themes we've been talking about here. The name of the program, right? I was thinking of these words, HaRinah v'HaT'fillah, which are words that we recite in one of the this kind of the central piyutim, the central poems that we sing in Slichot. And Rinah v'Tfilah, I think it's a really interesting point of translation, because sometimes in a case like a penitential prayer that we would sing on Slichot, we might think of Rinah as basically like a cry, HaRinah v'HaT'fillah, our supplication and our prayer. But when I hear the word Rinah, I think joy. I mean, no one names their child Rinah because they want it to be, my supplication. They use the name Rinah because it's the name, like, song of joy, much like how people love the name Shira. Or Ronit, Yafeh. And so I was thinking about these. This was a song that I wrote for Hanukkah, actually. That was because of the Psalm 30, which is known as the Shir Hanukkah Habayit, the song for the dedication of the temple. These are, by the way, it's the same psalm in which the famous Debbie Friedman song, You turn my mourning into dancing, so that my soul might sing to you. Debbie pulled those verses from the end of this 30th psalm. I was drawn to these particular words. Ki rega be'apo, chayim birtsono, ba'erev yalin bechi, ve'laboker Rinah. What I find interesting in particular is the fact that there's a lot of duality in Hebrew poetry, right? The idea that it is not this, but it is this. And we might expect that. So apo is an interesting word. Ki rega be'apo, which translates to something akin to like for a moment there are flaring nostrils. When we talk about God's anger, we often talk about be'apo, literally meaning the anger lives in the nose. I guess if you think about it when you're angry, like you can imagine that it lives in your nose. We might think that there was something like gladness is going to be the opposite of be'apo, but that's not what we get. We get ki rega be'apo chayim b'rtsono, that it's almost this pairing of anger and life. And I think sometimes when you explain what religion is to people who aren't involved and who really don't think deeply about it, they think that it's a lot of explaining away bad things, or bad theology of saying that this is why something bad has happened, and that there's a better reason why something bad has happened. I think that's what a lot of people think about religion. But this song, for me, says that it's not what it's about at all. It's about the fact that, yes, there is, right, our ancestors might have thought of divine anger as being the horror of the world, but that there's Chaim at the same time. And so it's not that there is anger and then there's joy. It's that there's anger, or or if we would use another word, that there's tragedy, but there's also life. And ba'erev yalin bechi, that I love this word yalin. Yalin it means to stay the night. It means to stay. It's like you stay in an inn. When Abraham's servant is seeking a bride for his son Isaac, he asks if there is room to stay the night, and Rebecca replies, "Yes, there is room. Yeah, like to lean to stay the night." So we stay the night in crying. It's temporary crying. V'la boker HaRinah, that though we go to sleep, joy comes in the morning. And I love this idea that we're only staying the night in the house of crying, in the house of death. And so I'm thinking about this idea of HaRinah v'HaT'fillah and this balance between the great sorrow that so many of us are carrying this summer, and the fact that HaRinah can sometimes mean a cry to the heavens, like Shema Adonai Kol Yekra, or it can mean a song of joy in the way that we were all banging away on our drums in Shemara Shabbat. So I thank you so much for coming, for singing and playing and speaking and thinking. It's been such a pleasure. We'll close for now with this song, and then I'm happy to stick around and chat. But I thought we would sing this last song together. Yalin bechi v'la boker HaRinah. Ki rega be'apo chayim birtzono Yalin bechi v'la boker HaRinah. So this time I dedicate myself anew, and though I may have lost my way, I will restore this flame again, and I will guard it even when my weary heart would give in. I make this promise to myself, to you. restore this flame again. And I will guard it even when my weary heart would give in. I make this promise to myself, to you. Thank you all so much. Really, thank you for, oh my gosh, everyone. I'm really, I've been so. What was that? Oh, please. And I know that this was kind of a last minute addition to the calendar, and I'm so moved by just everyone coming and coming with. I mean, this community comes out with just such an open heart. It's an extraordinary thing, and I've been just really so grateful to get to share these weeks with everyone, and certainly still got a couple more Shabbatot. I'm not going anywhere, but I really am. Thank you all so much, and I'll make sure too that just after that when I inevitably have to be back in New York, that I'll leave my personal email just so that we can stay in touch when my Micah email is no longer active for this summer. But everywhere I go, you hear about Temple Micah, and it really has. It's been everything that has been told to me and more. So just thank you all for welcoming me with such an open heart. Thank you.
Everybody says their place is great, but we all actually know it.
In a very modest way.
Yeah, right.
Daddy. I'm sorry? Oh, like just a singing group, and I mean, why not? Thank you, Barbara. Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Betty. Thank you, and Arthur and Sharon and Martha and David.